All right, Pete, to start with, going to be talking about Everton. Now, can you give us an update, please, on their current takeover situation and who's currently leading the race to take over the club?
Yeah, obviously, it's an ongoing situation with this Everton takeover. A number of parties have expressed interest in buying the club from Farhad Moshiri. We're just waiting to see who he will decide who will be his preferred bidder or who he wants to sell to after the sort of collapse of the deal by 7-7 Partners, which fell through at the end of May when they missed the deadline to complete that takeover as well. John Textor, the Crystal Palace owner, was seemingly the front runner, but now he has pulled out of the race to try and take over Everton. Obviously, he was trying to sell his stake in Crystal Palace to allow him to pursue that takeover bid for Everton, but that hasn't happened. So he's now out of the race. I don't think there's going to be a swift resolution to this. It's highly unlikely. These takeovers do take time, and we saw how long the 7-7 Partners situation dragged on for as well. No real favourites at the minute, Lewis. As I said, there's probably about 5 parties in there to try and buy Everton right now. You've got a consortium of international investors, which reportedly involves a member of the Saudi royal families who are willing to spend 400 million on Everton. So that will be interesting. After everything that's going on with Newcastle and Saudi investors, we've got the local businessmen, Andy Bell and George Downing, as well as MSP Sports Capital, who have obviously given loans to the club in the meantime while the 7-7 Partners deal was ongoing. So they're interested in the club as well. Then we've got a London-based businessman, Vitashe Manakun, who's leading the bid alongside that royal family member. And then we've also got the Roma owner, the American businessman Dan Friedkin, Michael Dell of Dell Technologies, and Kenneth King of investment firm ACCEPT. So lots of potential suitors for Everton. But as I said, it's not going to be a straightforward situation. Obviously, lots going on with Everton's. Really, they just want a bit of clarity on who is going to be the preferred bidder. And then after that, we've got all sorts to go on. Then we've got the exclusivity period of the potential new owners to go through Everton's accounts and everything else and come up with a deal which is suitable to Farhad Moshiri. And then we have the infamous Premier League owners and directors test as well to go through as well. So yeah, I don't see any potential deal happening for a couple of months at least, or maybe even longer. So it's no straightforward deal, and there's just more uncertainty around Everton, and the club find themselves in a bit of limbo.
All right, Connor. So on that note then, do you think that the volume of deals potentially, the amount of offers that are going to come in complicates this for Moshiri? And is he holding out for a bidding war potentially?
Yeah, I think I do agree with you. Definitely for a bidding war. I don't see why he wouldn't do that. He's a businessman at the end of the day. He's going to want the most money for his product. And that's Everton are a team, like, despite them being pretty shambolic on the pitch for the most part of the season, in some aspects in the last few years, they are still they're like a mainstay Premier League club, and they've got a brand new stadium coming. Like, they've still got like decent assets in that, so I think he has plenty of reason to hold out for a bidding war. And Premier League football club, you've seen the investment from outside of the UK in like recent years. The Newcastle takeover, obviously the American side of it, obviously own quite a lot of the clubs in the Premier League now. But yeah, so I can't see why he wouldn't hold out. I think Pete mentioned there was like a Saudi, was it a Saudi one he mentioned? So if they came in, sort of thing, that would be pretty crazy for them. And but yeah, so the money in the Premier League is just a bit silly. So I don't see why he wouldn't hold out for a bidding war. Definitely.
And Pete, from a sort of transfers perspective, where does that leave them going into the summer potentially? And are there any potential incomings that we could talk about they've targeted?
Yeah, well, unfortunately for Everton, the situation with the ownership up in the air, they're simply just in limbo. Like I mentioned earlier, they can't make any decisions on what they're going to do transfer-wise until the takeover happens. They do not have the money to spend because of financial restrictions and uncertainty over the ownership as well. So, as I said, it's a difficult situation for Sean Dyche and the recruitment team. I think right now for Everton, it's a case of trying to keep hold of their best players. That's where they've got the vultures circling around the club, seeing all these financial issues that the club are going through right now. And obviously we know there's a lot of interest in the likes of Jared Branthwaite. Manchester United strongly linked with him. There's been talk of even interest in Jordan Pickford, Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well. So for Sean Dyche and everybody connected with Everton, I think they'll be just hoping that in this transfer window coming up that they'll be able to keep hold of those top players, because they're not easy to replace and they're going to cost a lot of money to replace as well for Everton. So it's going to be a difficult summer transfer window, I think, for Sean Dyche and obviously the recruitment team. I think in an ideal world, Everton would be looking to bring in another centre-back as well as keep hold of as Branthwaite, looking probably covering both full-back positions as well, but potentially they might have to look at free agents for that one. And then I think we've talked previously on the pod about possibly having to cash in on Amadou Onana as the player that they're going to have to sacrifice to bring in a big transfer fee for him this summer, which will help for their PSR regulations. And then they'll be looking to replace him as well. And then I think Sean Dyche, for the last couple of transfer windows, he has been looking to maybe bring in a couple of wingers. So they'll be the priorities for incomings. But I think right now, Everton need to focus on outgoings and keeping hold of their best players, and they are going to have to sell some players, I think, just to meet the requirements of FFP and PSR. But I think for Sean Dyche, he'll be hoping it won't mean any of his top stars leaving. Maybe they could sell some fringe players. We did a story on Football Insider this week that Ben Godfrey has turned down numerous contract offers to extend his stay at Goodison Park. He's going into the final year of his contract, so maybe Everton might have to try and sell him and get some money for him rather than allowing him to run down his contract and possibly leave for a free transfer next summer.
And Pete, if you mentioned some of the names of the seller, Amadou Onana in there, what would his valuation be in today's market? And given the situation now with their takeover, what sort of valuation will they be holding out for potentially?
Yeah, I think Onana, very good young player. I think he'll only get better as well. And probably if he went to a top team, which he's publicly admitted that he sees himself playing for a top team, playing in European football, challenging for honours. I think Onana, Everton quite spent a lot of money, big fee on him when they did sign him from Lille, so they'll be looking at a healthy profit on that. So I'd say £50 million plus for Onana. Whether Everton get there or not, that's open for debate, because I'm sure the clubs will be thinking if Everton are desperate for money due to their financial situation, they might be able to land the Belgian international on the cheap. So I'm sure there'll be a few cheeky offers in from him. But yeah, I think Everton should be holding out for between 45 to 50 million for Onana. There's been a bit of interest from clubs from abroad, Bayern Munich, PSG, plus others in the Premier League like Arsenal are all admirers of Onana as well. So I think if Everton are forced to sell anybody, I think it would be Onana, and then that might allow them to keep the other players at Goodison Park.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.